The kitchen smelled like brown sugar and burnt ambition. Amora Okonkwo wiped flour from her hands, surveying the 50 dessert plates lined up like soldiers awaiting inspection. Chin Chin dusted with Korean cinnamon. Plantain-filled bungeopang. Suya spiced hotiok that would make a grandmother weep. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Pronto, she answered, slipping into flawless Italian as she adjusted a garnish. 3 floors above, in a room where men made decisions that ended lives, Kang Jinwoo's head snapped up from the contract he was signing. His hand froze mid-signature. Sir. His lieutenant, Dae Jung, followed his gaze to the security monitor. Jinwoo said nothing. He couldn't. Every functional part of his brain had short-circuited the moment that voice, warm, confident, effortlessly switching between Italian and Korean, had filtered through the speakers. The woman on screen moved like water, graceful and unhurried, completely unaware she was being watched. Who is she? The words came out rougher than he intended. The chef. Nigerian. Flew in this morning for the event. Why? Why? As if Jinwoo could explain the tightness in his chest, the way his fingers had begun to ache from gripping the pen too hard. He'd built an empire on control. 3 years of absolute discipline. No distractions. No weaknesses. No women. And then she smiled at something the person on the phone said, and he felt that control crack like ice under too much weight. I want. The explosion cut him off. The building shuddered. Glass shattered. Screams erupted from every direction as the lights died, plunging them into emergency red. Jinwoo was moving before the debris stopped falling, his gun already drawn, his men falling into formation behind him. Positions. Dae Jung barked into his comm, we have multiple breach points, possible hostile. The kitchen. Jinwoo was already running. Get to the kitchen now. He told himself it was protocol. That any civilian was worth protecting. That the sudden, violent fear clawing at his throat had nothing to do with brown eyes and a voice that sounded like music. He kicked open the kitchen door, weapon raised, and found her crouched behind an overturned table, phone pressed to her ear, whispering in rapid Korean. East corridor, 3-armed, moving fast. I count at least. She looked up, saw him, and her eyes went wide. I'll call you back. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Smoke curled between them. Somewhere, someone was crying. But in that sliver of devastation, Jinwoo felt something shift in his chest, something dangerous and irreversible. Who are you? He demanded. The chef. Her voice was steady despite the blood on her cheek. Who are you? Someone who just saved your life. Get up. She rose slowly, never breaking eye contact. Most people couldn't hold his gaze for more than 3 seconds. She held it like a challenge. I didn't need saving. You were giving tactical coordinates in Korean during an active shooter situation. He stepped closer, watching her throat work as she swallowed. So I'll ask again. Who are you really? Someone who watches a lot of Korean dramas? His jaw clenched. Dae Jung. Sir. Take her. Don't let her leave. Understanding flashed across her face, followed by anger, then something else. Something that made his pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. You're kidnapping me? Protective custody. That's just kidnapping with better marketing. Despite everything, his mouth almost curved. Almost. Would you prefer I leave you here for whoever just bombed my building? She opened her mouth, closed it, then lifted her chin. Fine. But I want my desserts. Your what? I spent 6 hours on those plates. If I'm being kidnapped, they're coming with me. This time, he did smile. Just barely. Just enough that Dae Jung's eyes widened in shock. Get her desserts. Amora woke to sunlight and silk sheets and the worst headache of her life. For a disorienting moment, she thought she dreamed the whole thing. The explosion. The cold-eyed man with the voice like smoke over gravel. The way her heart had stuttered when he'd looked at her like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Then she sat up and saw the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Como, the artwork that probably cost more than her entire neighborhood, and the 2 men in black suits standing outside her door. Not a dream. A nightmare with a good thread count. She explored her gilded cage methodically. The bedroom was larger than her apartment. The bathroom had a tub that could fit 4 people and made her want to weep with longing. The closet was stocked with clothes in exactly her size, which should have been comforting but was actually terrifying. The door wasn't locked. She tested it carefully, and it swung open to reveal a hallway that belonged in a museum. The guards looked up. Miss Okonkwo, the taller one said in accented English. You're awake. Mr. Kang said you could move freely through the estate. You just can't leave. So I'm a prisoner. A guest. A guest who can't leave is called a prisoner. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. The kitchen is downstairs. Chef prepared breakfast, but Mr. Kang said if you prefer to cook. I prefer to leave. That's not an option. She studied him for a long moment, then smiled sweetly. What's your name? Minute J, miss. Well, Minute J, I hope you like your job. Because I'm going to make the next however long this lasts absolutely miserable for everyone involved. She found the kitchen by following the scent of coffee. It was massive, professional grade, and currently occupied by a chef who took one look at her and fled like she carried the plague. Good. She needed to bake. Needed her hands in dough, needed the familiar alchemy of butter and sugar and heat. Needed to not think about the man who'd looked at her like she was dangerous. She was wrist-deep in pastry when he walked in. You cook when you're stressed. She didn't turn around. You kidnap women when you're what? Bored. Compensating. Making sure they don't get killed by people who want to hurt me. How noble. She shaped the dough with more force than necessary. Let me guess. You're some kind of crime lord, those men were here for you, and now I'm collateral damage. Something like that. And you think keeping me prisoner will help? How exactly? She heard him move closer, felt the heat of him at her back. Her hands stilled. You were speaking Korean during the attack, he said quietly, giving tactical information to someone. Who? My friend. She was trapped in the ballroom. Your friend who understands military terminology. Amora finally turned, flour dusting her cheek, and found him closer than she'd expected. Close enough to see the silver scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Close enough to smell cedar and something darker, something that made her dizzy. What do you want from me? His eyes dropped to her mouth, then back up. His jaw clenched. I haven't decided yet. Well, decide faster. I have a life to get back to. Do you? He tilted his head, studying her. Or do you have something else? Someone you report to? A mission, maybe? Her heart kicked against her ribs. You've been watching too many movies. And you've been trained too well to be just a chef. He reached past her, his arm brushing hers, and picked up the pastry she'd been working on. Brought it to his mouth. Bit. Amora watched his face change. Watched the ice crack, just for a second, watched something vulnerable and raw flash across his features before he locked it down again. But his hand trembled. Just slightly. Just enough. What is this? His voice had gone rough. Honey butter bread. Korean style, but I added. My mother used to make something like this. He set it down carefully, like it might shatter. Before she died. The admission hung between them, intimate and unexpected. Amora's anger softened despite herself. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. But he was staring at the pastry like it held answers to questions he'd stopped asking. I can't. He shook his head. I have to go. Wait. But he was already moving, already putting distance between them like she'd burned him. The door swung shut, and Amora stood alone in the kitchen, flour on her hands and her heart beating too fast for safety. The days that followed were torture. Jinwoo told himself he was being professional. Strategic. He visited her each evening to ensure she had everything she needed, to ask if she'd remembered any useful details about the attack, to maintain control of the situation. He was lying to himself, and they both knew it. On the second day, he found her by the pool. She wore a simple sundress that should have been modest but somehow made his mouth go dry. The late afternoon sun turned her skin to warm bronze, caught the gold in her dark eyes, and he actually turned around and walked away without saying a word. Daejung found him in his office, hands braced on his desk, breathing like he'd run a marathon. Sir, are you? Get out. Is this about the Nigerian woman? Jinwoo's glare could have stripped paint. Get out. On the third day, they had dinner together. He wasn't sure how it happened. One moment he was walking past the dining room, The next she was looking up from her plate and saying, "You know, it's creepy that you keep feeding me but never eat with me. Makes me feel like I'm being fattened up for something." So he Saturday. And she served him something she'd made, some fusion of Nigerian and Korean that shouldn't work but did, and when she leaned forward to wipe sauce from the corner of his mouth with her thumb, he caught her wrist. They froze like that. Her thumb against his lips. His fingers wrapped around her wrist, feeling her pulse race. "This is torture," he said quietly. "The food. You know what I mean." She pulled back slowly, deliberately. "Then let me go." "I can't." "Can't or won't?" "Both." He stood abruptly. "The Benedetti family knows I have you. If I let you go, they'll use you to get to me. So you stay until this is over." "And when will it be over?" "When I've eliminated every person who might hurt you." The words came out more intense than he'd meant them. More revealing. She stared at him, lips parted, and he saw the exact moment understanding dawned in her eyes. "You're interested in me. Not a question. Don't pretend you don't know. I don't understand it." "Neither do I." He moved toward her despite every instinct screaming at him to run. "You walk into a room and I can't think straight. You smile and I forget why I built walls. You speak and I want to hear every language on your tongue." He was close enough now to see her pupils dilate. "I can't last 2 minutes around you without wanting things that would ruin us both." "What kinds of things?" The question was barely a whisper. He reached up, his hand hovering near her face but not quite touching, and she swayed toward him like gravity had shifted. "Things I have no right to want from you. What if I want them too?" His control snapped. He closed the distance, his hand finally cupping her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Her skin was softer than he'd imagined. Warmer. She leaned into his touch, and he felt something in his chest crack open, something he'd kept locked away for years. Then his phone rang. The sound shattered the moment. He saw her blink, saw reality crash back in, and he forced himself to step away before he did something irreversible. "I have to take this." He left before she could respond, before he could see if she looked as destroyed as he felt. The call was from Marco Russo. Brief, threatening, and very clear. They knew about Amora. They wanted Jinwoo to understand that nothing he cared about was safe. Which meant she was in more danger than he'd thought. Which meant keeping her close wasn't optional anymore. Which meant he was completely screwed. On the 4th day, he found her in the library, reading one of his books. She looked up when he entered, and something in her expression made him pause. "You learned Italian," she said. "What?" She held up the book. "This is the Italian edition of my favorite novel." Someone dog-eared the pages, made notes in the margins. "In Italian. When did you learn it?" He said nothing. Couldn't admit that he'd started learning it the day after their conversation, desperate for any connection to her, any way to understand what made her who she was. "Jinwoo." She stood, the book falling forgotten. "What are you doing?" "I don't know." The confession felt like falling. "I've spent 3 years building an empire. 3 years staying focused, disciplined, alone. And then you answered a phone in Italian and everything I built just collapsed. I'm not some fantasy. I'm a real person with a real life you've stolen." "I know." "Then why?" "Because real or not, you're the first thing in years that's made me feel human." He moved toward her, unable to stop himself. "Because you look at me like I'm a man, not a monster. Because when you speak, I forget that I have blood on my hands and darkness in my soul. You don't know me well enough to feel this way. I know you speak 6 languages and bake when you're stressed. I know you're terrified but won't show it. I know you argue in 3 different languages when you think no one's listening. I know you cry at night and pretend you don't in the morning." He was standing right in front of her now. "So tell me I don't know you. Tell me I'm wrong." "You're not wrong." Her voice wavered. "But you're not right either. You only see what you want to see. Then show me the rest." "Why should I?" "Because I think you feel this too. This pull. This madness." His hand moved to her waist, barely touching. "Tell me I'm alone in this." She looked up at him, eyes bright with unshed tears and something fiercer, something that made his heart race. "You're not alone." "Then let me." "No." She pressed her hand against his chest, stopping him. You don't get to keep me prisoner and seduce me at the same time. You want me? Earn it. Give me a reason to trust you. What reason could possibly be enough? The truth. About who you are, what you do, why those men attacked. She stepped back, breaking the contact. No more games. No more half-truths. Just you, raw and real, and let me decide if you're worth the risk. He stared at her for a long moment, this woman who'd somehow become the axis his world turned on, and made a choice that terrified him more than any bullet ever had. All right. Come with me. He took her to his office, locked the door, and poured them both a drink. Then he told her everything. The Kang Syndicate. His father's empire, built on blood and fear. The wars he'd fought, the men he'd killed, the deals he'd made that would damn him in any honest court. He told her about the transition he was trying to make, moving the family business toward legitimacy, and how the old guard was resisting. He told her about Marco Russo, whose family wanted to expand into Asian markets. About Victor Santos, the arms dealer who'd hired her. Yes, he knew about Victor and how they'd orchestrated the attack to destabilize Jinwoo's position. Victor hired you to cater that event, he said quietly. But you were never meant to just cook. You were bait. Amora set down her glass with shaking hands. What? They knew I'd be there. Knew I'd see you. They wanted me distracted, vulnerable. His smile was bitter. It worked better than they could have hoped. So everything about this. She gestured between them. It was all part of someone's plan. Their plan was for me to notice you. What happened after was all me. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. They wanted distraction. I became obsessed. They wanted weakness. I found something worth protecting. I'm not a thing to be protected. I know. You're a woman who speaks tactical Korean to her friends during terrorist attacks. He raised an eyebrow. Care to tell me the truth now? Amora was silent for a long moment. Then she laughed, a broken sound. You want truth? Fine. I work for an international task force. Anti-trafficking, weapons smuggling, organized crime. Victor Santos has been my target for 6 months. She met his eyes. I was sent to that event to gather intelligence on him. You were an unexpected complication. An complication. The word tasted like ash. A distraction. She stood, pacing. I was supposed to stay focused, gather evidence, get out clean. But then you looked at me like I was the only real thing in a room full of lies, and everything got complicated. So you were using me. At first, yes. She turned to face him. But not now. Not for weeks now. How do I know that's true? You don't. She spread her hands. Just like I don't know if you're keeping me here to protect me or to keep me close. Just like neither of us can trust what we feel because it started as manipulation. Her voice broke. But I do feel it. This pull. This madness. And I hate it because it makes everything harder. Jinwoo stood slowly, moved to her. What if we stop fighting it? Then we're both fools. I've been called worse. He reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. I'm going to take down Victor and Marco. I'm going to end this war. And then I'm going to ask you, properly, if you want to stay. And if I say no, then I let you go. The words physically hurt. No matter what it costs me. She squeezed his hand. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. They stood like that, hands joined, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. Then Amora leaned up, pressed her lips to his cheek, and whispered, Earn it, Jinwoo. Earn my trust. Then we'll see. She left him standing there, heart pounding, and for the first time in 3 years, he felt like he had something to fight for beyond survival. The plan came together quickly. Amora would meet with Victor, wearing a wire, and get him to confess to the attack. Simple. Clean. Absolutely terrifying. I don't like this, Jinwoo said for the 5th time as Daejung fitted the wire under Amora's blouse. Noted, Amora said dryly. If anything goes wrong. It won't. But if it does. Then you burst in like the overprotective crime lord you are and save me. She caught his hand. I've done this before, Jinwoo. I'm good at my job. I know. He pulled her aside, away from Daejung's knowing smirk. His hands settled on her waist, and he tried not to notice how perfectly she fit against him. But this is different. Why? Because this time I care what happens to you. The admission came easier than he'd expected. Because if he hurts you, I will burn his entire empire to ash and dance in the ruins. She smiled up at him, something soft and dangerous in her eyes. That's deeply unhealthy. I'm aware. Also kind of hot. Amora. Relax. She patted his chest, her hand lingering over his heart. I'll be fine. You'll be listening to every word. And when this is over, we'll figure out what happens next. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't do anything stupid if things go sideways. I can't promise that. Then we're even. She rose on her toes, pressed a quick kiss to his jaw. For luck. Then she was gone, leaving him with the ghost of her touch and a fear so acute it felt like drowning. The restaurant was expensive, private, and packed with Victor's security. Amora walked in like she owned the place, and Jinwoo listened through the earpiece as she greeted Victor in perfect Italian. Amora, cara. Victor's oily voice made Jinwoo's hands clench. You look well. Staying with Kang. Jinwoo agrees with you. I wouldn't say staying. More like being held against my will. Victor laughed. A gilded cage is still a cage. Tell me, does the Ice King melt for you? Jinwoo heard her pause, imagined her smile. I don't know what you mean. Don't play coy. I hired you because you're brilliant, beautiful, and exactly his type. I knew he wouldn't be able to resist. Cloth rustling, Victor leaning closer. What I didn't expect was how completely you'd captivate him. The man is obsessed. You used me as bait. I used you as a weapon. And you performed beautifully. Until your men tried to kill us both. Collateral damage. The goal was to destabilize his organization, create chaos. Your death would have been regrettable but acceptable. Jinwoo was moving before he'd made the conscious decision, Daejung and his team falling in behind him. Through the earpiece, he heard Amora's voice shift, heard the fear she was trying to hide. So you admit you orchestrated the attack? I orchestrated a masterpiece. The Russos provided the muscle, I provided the plan, and Jinwoo provided the perfect target, a woman he cares about. Victor's voice turned ugly. Did you really think you'd get away with wearing a wire to dinner with me? Gunfire. Screaming. The comm went dead. Jinwoo hit the restaurant at a full run, his gun already drawn. Victor's men were everywhere, but they might as well have been paper dolls. He moved through them like a force of nature, cold and efficient and absolutely merciless. He found Amora in the kitchen, holding a knife she'd clearly taken from one of Victor's guards. There was blood on her dress, not hers, thank God, and fury in her eyes. East exit, she said in Korean. 3 more coming. He eliminated them without breaking stride, then pulled her against him, one hand cradling her head, the other pressed to her back. Are you hurt? No. You? No. He pulled back just enough to see her face. You were supposed to stay safe. I was safe. I handled it. He stopped, looked at the knife in her hand, the bodies behind her, and felt something like pride mix with the terror. You're incredible. I know. She grinned, wild and beautiful. Now can we please get out of here before more of them show up? They made it back to the estate as the sun was rising. Amora's adrenaline had crashed somewhere around kilometer 10, leaving her exhausted and shaking. Jinwoo carried her inside despite her protests, settled her on his sofa, and wrapped her in a blanket like she was something precious. Victor's in custody, Daejung reported. Singing like a canary. We have enough to bury him and the Russos. Good. Jinwoo didn't look away from Amora. Leave us. When they were alone, he knelt in front of her, took her hands in his. I'm sorry. For what? For putting you in danger. For not protecting you better. For. Stop. She cupped his face. I chose this. I knew the risks. And I'm fine. You could have died. But I didn't. She smiled softly. We didn't. He leaned his forehead against hers, breathing her in. I can't do this. Do what? Pretend I don't feel this. Pretend you're not the most important thing in my world. Pretend I could ever let you go. Then don't pretend. Her voice was barely a whisper. Tell me the truth. I love you. The words fell out like a confession, like a prayer. I've loved you since you answered that phone in Italian. I've loved you through every argument, every moment of you being too brave and too stubborn and too perfect. Amora's breath caught. Jinwoo. I know it's too soon. I know I have no right. I know you came here for a job and I turned your life upside down. His hands tightened on hers. But I need you to know that when I look at you, I see my future. I see the person I want to become. I see everything I thought I'd lost when my mother died. Stop talking, she whispered. Amora. Stop talking and kiss me. He stared at her for one heartbeat, two. Then he surged up, capturing her mouth with his, and everything else fell away. The fear, the danger, the complications, none of it mattered. Only this. Only her. The kiss was desperate and tender, hungry and reverent. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers gripped his shirt, and when they finally broke apart they were both shaking. I love you too, she gasped against his lips. I've been trying not to for weeks, but I do. I love you and it terrifies me. Good. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. Be terrified with me. Jinwoo. His name was a plea. Tell me what you want. You. All of you. No more walls, no more holding back. Her eyes met his, dark and certain. Show me who you are when you're not trying to be careful. Something in him snapped. He lifted her, carried her to his bedroom, and laid her down like she was made of starlight. Then he proceeded to take her apart, piece by piece, with hands and mouth and whispered words in 3 languages. She gave as good as she got, her touch searing through him, her voice breaking on his name as they moved together. When they finally came together, it felt like coming home, like finding something he'd been searching for his entire life. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her back. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we figure out how to build a life together. You're a crime boss. I work for an international task force. I'm transitioning to legitimate business. You could consult. She laughed, the sound vibrating through him. That's the worst cover story I've ever heard. I'm new at this. The whole having someone I care about thing. I noticed. She propped herself up on his chest, studying him. I'll need to report in. Explain what happened. There will be questions. Will they let you stay? If I want to. Do I want to? He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. I can't promise you easy. I can't promise you safe. What I can promise is that I will spend every day earning your trust, earning your love, becoming the man you deserve. What if you're already that man? Then I'll spend every day proving it wasn't a mistake to choose me. She kissed him, soft and sweet. You're too sweet for a crime lord. And you're too dangerous for a chef. Good thing we're both liars. They spent the night learning each other, mapping scars and secrets, building something fragile and fierce between them. And when morning came, they faced it together. 6 months later, Amora stood in her bakery, Sweet Fusion, a ridiculous name she'd insisted on, watching the lunch rush with satisfaction. The fusion desserts were a hit. The cafe was packed. And her husband was late. Again. The bell over the door chimed, and she didn't have to look to know it was him. She felt it, that electric pull that had never faded. You're late, she said without turning around. I'm exactly on time for someone who just closed a $100 million deal. Legitimate business. Completely. He slid his arms around her waist from behind, pressed a kiss to her neck. Mostly. Jinwoo. I'm kidding. Another kiss. Maybe. She turned in his arms, saw the heat in his eyes, felt answering warmth unfurl in her belly. We're in public. I'm aware. It's 2 in the afternoon. Also aware. Jinwoo, we can't. Can't what? His voice dropped, intimate and dangerous. Can't close early. Can't go upstairs to the apartment. Can't do what we both want to do. I have customers. Who are all too polite to stare at how much your husband wants you. He nipped at her ear. How long has it been since this morning? 7 hours. 7 hours. He pulled back, mock serious. Do you know what that is? What? 420 minutes. I told you I can't last 2 minutes around you. His eyes crinkled. That's 418 minutes too long. She laughed, helpless against the warmth flooding her chest. You're ridiculous. I'm in love. He kissed her properly this time, deep and claiming, and she heard someone in the cafe whistle. Now close the shop. It's the middle of the day. So. He was already pulling her toward the back. I own the building. I say we can close whenever we want. You're impossible. And you love me anyway. She did. God help her, she did. This man who'd kidnapped her and protected her and loved her with an intensity that still took her breath away. This former crime lord who learned languages for her and built her a bakery and looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered in the entire world. I do love you, she said, stopping him. Even when you're bossy and overprotective and completely insane. Good. He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. Because I'm going to love you for the rest of our lives. I'm going to wake up every morning grateful you chose me. I'm going to spend every day proving I was worth the risk. You already have. Then I'll keep proving it anyway. They went upstairs together, leaving the cafe with a hastily scrawled closed for family emergency sign. And if the emergency was that Jinwoo couldn't keep his hands off his wife for another minute, well, that was their business. Later, wrapped in sheets and each other, Amora traced the scar through his eyebrow. Do you ever regret it? How we started. Every day. She stiffened. What? I regret that I didn't meet you sooner. That we wasted time fighting what we felt. That you had to be in danger for me to realize what you meant to me. He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. But I don't regret us. I could never regret us. Even though I'm too sweet. Especially because you're too sweet. He pulled her closer. You made me want to be better. You made me believe I could be more than what I was born into. You saved me, Amora. We saved each other. Yeah. He smiled, rare and genuine. We did. Outside, Seoul glittered in the twilight. A new city, a new life, a future they were building together one day at a time. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was theirs. And that was everything. Welcome to Afro-Korean Stories TV. If you loved this story of dangerous love and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe for more passionate tales. Drop a comment below telling us, would you take a chance on love with someone dangerous? What would you do in Amora's situation? We read every comment and your thoughts fuel our next stories. Share this with someone who loves intense romance, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Until next time, remember, the best love stories are written in blood and sugar, danger and devotion. Now go forth and be dangerously in love.